Every month for 5 years I sent her mother money. For $100 I could barely spare. I thought it kept her memory alive. But it turns out, it was feeding a lie that would shatter everything I believed about love, loyalty, and loss. Before we begin, please like, subscribe and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, Malaysia, UK, Australia, Jamaica. The trade winds rolled through Honolulu that morning, carrying the faint smell of salt and diesel from the docks. The same smell that always reminded Caleb Hanalei of the morning his wife's boat never came back. Every first Friday of the month, he repeated the same ritual. He'd wake before sunrise, pour black coffee into the chipped mug Malia bought on their honeymoon, and open his banking app. The number glowed on his cracked phone screen. $400, transfer to Lena Kakai. He never missed a month. Not once in 5 years. Not when work was slow. Not when the rent went up. Not even when Noah, his 14-year-old son, needed new shoes for school. Promise was a promise. And Malia had asked him, her hand trembling from morphine, "Please, Cal, take care of Mom after I'm gone. Promise me that." He did. And so, every month he hit send. The sound of the confirmation ping filled the small kitchen, echoing against tile and old cabinets. Caleb exhaled, rubbed his temples, and stared out the window. The city was waking up, scooters buzzing, roosters crowing from backyards that were too small to hold them. "Dad, we're out of milk again," Noah called from the hallway, his voice breaking between teenage depth and childhood pitch. "Use the almond milk," Caleb said. Noah groaned. "That's your milk." Caleb cracked a grin. "Guess we're both growing men now." Their banter was light, easy, the kind that came from years of surviving hard things together. But when Noah left for school, the house grew too quiet again. That's when the text came. "Auntie Lena, Caleb, can we talk later? Need to change the bank number. Something wrong with my account again." Caleb frowned. The number had been the same for years. He typed back quickly, "Caleb, sure thing. You okay?" No reply. He stared at the message for a while. His gut twisted. Maybe she'd been scammed. Hawaii's elderly got targeted all the time. Or maybe she was just confused. Still it nagged him. At work, he tried to shake it off. The day stretched long beneath the sticky heat. Caleb worked as an HVAC technician, crawling through attics and balancing on rooftops above Waikiki condos that smelled of sunscreen and money. His foreman, Eddie Kaluna, noticed his distraction. "You good, brother? You look like you seen a ghost." Caleb wiped sweat from his brow. "Maybe I did." Eddie laughed, slapping his back. "Tell that ghost to help you carry this unit, yeah?" They worked through the afternoon, but Caleb's thoughts kept circling back to the text. Lena had always been polite, grateful even, but distant. After Malia's funeral, she'd withdrawn. Never called to ask about Noah. Never invited them over. Just quietly accepted the monthly payments like clockwork. He'd told himself that was grief. Everyone carried it differently. But the thought of her changing her account felt wrong, like someone messing with a sacred rhythm. That night, after Noah went to bed, Caleb sat at the kitchen table with his old laptop. The glow from the screen lit up the framed photo above the counter, Malia standing in a white sundress on the beach at Kailua Bay, the same spot where they'd scattered her ashes. Except sometimes, in dreams, he swore she was still there. Not as a ghost, but as someone walking away, toward the horizon, not under it. He shook the thought away. Grief made people see things that weren't there. He opened his bank history, scrolling through 5 years of payments. Every single one labeled, "Support for Lena Kaakahi." Every single one going to the same routing number. He clicked the latest confirmation, the one from this morning. For the first time, he read the fine print beneath the transaction. Account ending in 1147. Recipient, Lena Kaakahi, verified March 2021. He thought it was verified years ago. Had the bank changed something? Or had she? He checked the new account number she texted earlier. It ended in 5523. Something about that number rang familiar, but not from Lena's paperwork. Somewhere else. He closed the laptop. His heartbeat thudded slow and heavy. Saturday morning, he drove to the other side of town, the older part of Honolulu, where houses still leaned on coral rock foundations and the air smelled like plumeria and rust. Lena's house looked tired. Paint peeling. Mailbox dented. He knocked once, twice. No answer. A neighbor, an older Filipino man watering his lawn, called over, "You looking for Auntie Lena?" Caleb nodded. "Yeah." "You seen her?" The man shrugged. "She moved out couple months ago. Said she going Maui stay with family. Don't think she coming back." "You family?" "Something like that," Caleb murmured. He thanked him and walked back to his truck, pulse tight. Moved to Maui? She hadn't mentioned that. She just texted him yesterday. Back in the truck, he scrolled through his phone. There was another text from her, sent after midnight. "Sorry, I fall asleep. We talk later, yeah?" No punctuation. No emoji. Not her usual style. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, "What the hell's going on?" That night, Caleb sat on the back porch, the trade winds brushing against his face. Noah was asleep inside. The sky stretched wide and black over the island, dotted with distant lights from planes crossing the Pacific. He opened Malia's old cedar box, the one Lena had given him after the funeral. Inside were photos, a sea glass bracelet, a hospital tag. At the bottom, tucked beneath a folded lei ribbon, he found an old receipt from a gas station in Kihei, Maui, dated 2 years after her death. The name scribbled on it stopped him cold. M. Hanalei. He held the paper between his fingers, trembling. The wind caught it and nearly carried it away. He stared into the dark ocean, its waves whispering secrets he didn't want to hear. For the first time since Malia's funeral, Caleb wasn't sure what, or who, he had buried. "I poured my heart into this story because I believe real emotions still matter. My girlfriend laughed and said I'd never even reach 1,000 subscribers. She might be right, unless someone like you proves her wrong. Please hit subscribe, not for me alone, but for the stories that deserve to be heard." The next morning, the surf along Ala Moana shimmered under an early sun, and Caleb couldn't shake the chill that had crawled into his bones overnight. He had spent half the night turning that Kihei gas station receipt over in his hands. The ink had faded, but the date and name were clear enough to haunt him. He wasn't supposed to doubt a promise made beside a coffin, but the more he thought about it, the more something felt off. Maybe Lena really had gone to Maui. Maybe the bank change was innocent. Still, the on that scrap of paper pulled at him like undertow. At his shop downtown, compressors hummed and coworkers joked over plate lunches. Caleb moved through jobs like a machine, checking thermostats, refilling Freon, but his mind kept circling back to the numbers on that receipt. By noon, he found himself outside First Pacific Bank, the small branch off King Street where his old friend Kai Nakamura worked in IT security. Inside, the air conditioning hit like a freezer. Kai looked up from behind the counter, grinning. "Hanalei. Bro, what brings you here? You finally gonna refinance that truck?" Caleb gave a weak smile. "Need you to look at something. Off the record." They stepped into a side office. Caleb slid a crumpled note across the desk. "That's the account I've been sending money to. My mother-in-law. I just need to make sure it's still hers." Kai arched an eyebrow. "You know I can't." "Please," Caleb interrupted. "Just tell me if anything looks wrong." Kai sighed, tapping at his keyboard. The screen's glow reflected off his glasses. "Okay, routing number checks out for our branch. But the name on file isn't Lena Kahukahi." He hesitated. "It's registered to someone named Kalua. Joint account. Lots of cash movement. Large deposits, regular transfers to the mainland." Caleb's stomach tightened. Could Lena have added someone? "Maybe," Kai said, frowning at the data. "But this looks like a business account. Luxury charges, Wailea Resort, Ala Moana jewelry, airfare. Whoever it is, they're not scraping by on Social Security." He turned the screen toward Caleb. "You sure you know where your money's going, man?" Caleb stared at the numbers. His $400 looked like drops in a storm of thousands. He forced a nod. "Thanks, Kai. You didn't see me, yeah?" As he walked out into the hot Honolulu afternoon, traffic roaring along Kapiolani Boulevard, his pulse pounded in his ears. Kalua. The name echoed like surf against rock. Malia's cousin's surname had been Kalua. Or maybe it was just coincidence. He spent the drive home replaying every conversation he'd had with Lena over the years. Her voice on the phone, steady, polite, always cutting calls short. The few times she texted, they were short and precise. Mahalo, Kel? Got it. Never any warmth. Never asking about Noah. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table while Noah scrolled on his phone across from him. The boy's face lit by the blue glow looked too young, too trusting. Caleb thought of telling him, but what would he say? Hey son, remember your mom's ashes we scattered? She might not be dead. Instead, he asked softly, you remember Auntie Lena's place out Kapolei side? Yeah. Why? She ever talk about moving? Noah frowned. I don't think so. You gonna visit her? Caleb nodded absently. Something like that. Sunday morning, he packed a small bag, told Noah he had a job call on another island, and booked a one-way ticket to Kaului, Maui. The receipt still sat folded in his wallet, a compass pointing toward whatever truth waited there. The short flight crossed turquoise water and clouds shaped like broken promises. From the airport, he rented a dented silver pickup and drove south toward Kihei. Palms whipped in the wind, the roads narrowed between lava fields and condos that all looked the same. He found the address from the bank records, McKenna Sands Apartments, a cream-colored building with bougainvillea spilling over the fence. Sunlight glared off the windows. Inside the leasing office, a woman with a tan sharper than her smile greeted him. Aloha, can I help you? I'm looking for my aunt, Lena Kakahi. She might be renting here. She clicked through her computer. Don't have that name. Closest is Malia K. Rivera. She's in 3B. Been here about 2 years. Quiet tenant, pays early. The name punched the air out of him. Malia Rivera, her mother's maiden name. He swallowed hard. She home. The woman shook her head. Usually gone mornings. Comes back late. You family? He forced a smile. Something like that. Back in his truck, he parked across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles blanched. Noon heat shimmered off the asphalt. After 20 minutes, a black SUV pulled in. The driver's door opened, and she stepped out. Malia. Same long stride, same dark hair streaked by the sun, though shorter now, tied in a bun. She wore sunglasses and a white dress that fluttered in the breeze. She looked alive. Too alive. A tall man exited the passenger side, tan, broad-shouldered, gold chain flashing. He put an arm around her waist as they walked toward the building, laughing. Caleb's breath hitched. The soundless scene unfolded like a cruel film he couldn't pause. He wanted to run, to call out her name, to make sense of the impossible. But something colder took hold, a need to know before he acted. He waited until they disappeared inside, then jotted the license plate number on a receipt. His hand shook. Back at a roadside diner, he ordered coffee he wouldn't drink and searched the name Malia K. Rivera on his phone. Within minutes, local real estate articles popped up, photos of her and the same man, Derek Manoa, at charity events. She was listed as marketing consultant. The smile in the picture was hers. No mistake. He scrolled further. An article dated just 3 months ago. Local couple expands realty ventures to mainland. He almost laughed, a dry, broken sound. The woman he mourned was thriving 20 minutes from the beach where he'd once scattered her ashes. That night he sat on the balcony of a cheap motel, staring out toward the faint glow of Wailea resorts along the shore. His phone buzzed, another message from Auntie Lena. Lena, hi Cal. Did you change your bank info? I don't see payment this month. Caleb's chest tightened. The audacity of it twisted something inside him. He typed back slowly. Caleb, was just about to send. Might be late. Lena, okay. Need it soon please. He stared at the screen until the message bubble vanished. Behind him, the motel TV played a local news segment about tourism fraud. The reporter mentioned forged documents and fake death certificates. Words that lodged like splinters. He reached for his phone and searched Private Investigator Maui. The first name that popped up was Layla Brooks, licensed PI, Wailuku. When she answered, her voice was brisk, Professional. Brooks Investigations. Hi, he said quietly. I need help finding someone. Someone who's supposed to be dead. There was a pause. You'll need to come in tomorrow morning, Mr. Hanalei. Caleb Hanalei. He hung up, leaning back against the creaking chair. The night air smelled of salt and frangipani. Somewhere beyond the palms, waves hissed against the shore, whispering truths he could no longer ignore. For 5 years he had lived like a man keeping vigil over ashes. Now he knew the fire had never gone out. It had just moved to another island and learned how to lie. Morning sunlight spilled across the worn carpet of the Wailuku office where Layla Brooks worked. The blinds rattled against a steady breeze, and Caleb sat across from her desk, clutching the photograph of Malia that he'd taken from his wallet, the one from their anniversary at Hanuma Bay, her hair wet from the surf, her smile easy and sure. Layla studied the photo, then looked up at him. You're telling me your wife died 5 years ago, but you just saw her in Kihei? Caleb nodded. Same face, same walk. She was with another man. Layla leaned back, tapping a pen against her notebook. You got any proof she legally died? I got a death certificate, ashes, a funeral home receipt, all handled by her mother. Her eyebrows arched. You still got those documents? Yeah. At home in Honolulu. Good. Because if she faked this, we're talking insurance fraud, identity theft, maybe more. I'll run some checks. She scribbled notes with methodical precision. You said you've been sending money to her mother since the funeral? $400. Every month. My wife made me promise. Layla looked up sharply. You're still paying? I was. Until last week. She let out a low whistle. If this is what it sounds like, you're not just a grieving husband, you're a victim in an ongoing con. The word con made Caleb's stomach twist. Layla slid a business card across the desk. Give me 48 hours. I'll see what your wife's been up to and where your money went. Those 2 days crawled. Caleb stayed on Maui, walking the beaches where Malia had once wanted to renew their vows. Everything looked the same. The palm trees bending toward the sea, the lazy rhythm of island life, but nothing felt familiar. On the second evening, his phone buzzed. Layla Brooks. Got something, she said. You better sit down. He sank onto the edge of the motel bed. Your wife, Layla began, never filed for death in the state of Hawaii. The certificate you've got was forged. The funeral home she supposedly used closed a year before her death. And there's more. She collected $75,000 in life insurance under her maiden name, transferred to an account tied to your mother-in-law. Caleb closed his eyes. The air seemed to thicken. So Lena helped her? Looks that way, Layla said. And they're not amateurs. This kind of setup takes planning. Fake paperwork, fake witnesses. My guess is, your wife wanted out of her life, and her mother helped her build a new one. A long silence hung between them. Layla's voice softened. I know it's a lot. But you're not crazy. You really saw her. He rubbed his temples. All those years. I thought she was gone. Layla hesitated. You want me to keep digging? Yes. I want to know everything. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He sat outside, staring at the moon reflecting over the ocean. The gentle rhythm of waves had always calmed him, but now each crash sounded like a lie breaking open. He thought about Noah, how his son still talked about his mother like she was some angel watching over them. How could he tell him the truth? How could he explain that his mother had chosen to disappear? He scrolled through old photos on his phone. There they were, Malia holding baby Noah at Ala Moana Park, their family barbecues, her laughing with friends. Every memory felt contaminated like water gone bad. The next morning, Layla called again. You should come in. When Caleb arrived, she already had files spread across her desk, printouts of bank records, property deeds, and screenshots. She's been living under the name Malia Rivera, Layla explained. She and this man, Derek Manoa, they're partners in a real estate shell company. They've been moving money between islands, laundering through small accounts, like yours. You weren't the only one sending monthly payments. There are 3 others, men who think they're supporting their late wives' families. Caleb's jaw clenched. So she's still doing it. Still stealing. Layla nodded. Looks that way. I also found a condo deed in her name. Signed last year. She flipped a photo toward him, Malia and Derek at a luau fundraiser, champagne glasses raised. Caleb's throat burned. She looks happy. She looks free, Layla corrected. But freedom built on lies doesn't last. He stared at the image, her smile frozen mid-laugh. 5 years I sent her money. 5 years I kept her alive without knowing it. Layla said quietly, "You want justice?" He hesitated. "I want truth first. Then I'll decide." That afternoon, Caleb drove back to Kihei. The condo complex shimmered in the late sun. He parked across the street, watching through the windshield as Malia came out carrying grocery bags. No cameras, no police, just him and his ghost. He stepped from the truck. His feet felt heavy, every nerve buzzing. "Malia," he called softly. She froze, bags slipping from her hands. The oranges rolled across the sidewalk. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but her voice trembled. "Caleb." For a moment, neither moved. The ocean hissed behind them, and the world seemed to tilt. He took a step closer. "You're alive." She glanced around, panic flickering across her face. "You shouldn't be here." 5 years, he said, voice breaking. 5 years I buried you every day. You let me raise our son alone. You let me pay your mother while you built a new life. Malia's composure cracked. "You don't understand. I couldn't stay. I was drowning, Cal. You never saw it." "I saw everything," he said. "You just didn't want help, you wanted escape." She backed away, shaking. "You'll ruin everything." He looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the woman he'd loved. She was a stranger wearing her skin. "I didn't come to ruin anything," he said softly. "I came to end it." He turned and walked back to his truck, leaving her standing amid the fallen oranges, sunlight glaring off the windshield as he drove away. That evening, Layla met him at the pier. The wind carried the scent of grilled fish and gasoline. "You confronted her," she said. He nodded. "She knows I know." "Then we move fast. I've got a contact with the FBI's Honolulu office. They've been tracking similar fraud cases. If we cooperate, they can take it from here." Caleb stared out at the ocean. "Do it." Layla rested a hand on his shoulder. "You did the hard part already, Caleb. You faced the ghost." Back at the motel, he scrolled through his phone, stopping on a video he'd taken years ago, Malia teaching Noah to surf at Waikiki. Their laughter echoed faintly through the small room. He hit pause. The screen froze on her smiling face, forever mid-motion. He whispered to himself, "You're not the only one who can disappear, Malia." He closed the laptop, drew a long breath, and stared at the darkness beyond the window. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free right away. It just burns away the lies until all that's left is something clean enough to start over. If you've ever held on to something that hurt longer than it should have, if you've ever kept paying for someone else's peace while losing your own, then you understand Caleb. Don't let the next story slip past you. Hit subscribe, stay with us, because sometimes the hardest stories, the ones that hurt to hear, are the ones that show us how to heal. 2 days later, the gray horizon over Oahu crackled with the first hint of a storm. Caleb stood at the edge of Sand Island Harbor, staring out at the restless Pacific. He could smell the metal of rain before it fell. The ocean had taken his wife once. At least, that's what he used to believe. Now, it was just a mirror for all the things he hadn't seen coming. A government sedan pulled into the lot. Layla Brooks stepped out, followed by a woman in a crisp navy suit. She had the posture of someone who had never once lost control of a room. "Caleb," Layla said, motioning toward her companion. "This is Agent Rosa Delgado, FBI. She heads Honolulu's white-collar crime division." The agent shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Hanalei, I appreciate you coming in. Ms. Brooks filled me in on the situation. You've been sending money for 5 years to an account tied to an ongoing fraud network." Caleb nodded, jaw tight. "My wife's part of it." Delgado's gaze didn't waver. "We've been tracking similar cases, fake deaths, fraudulent insurance claims, identity theft. Most victims are widowers like yourself. Your wife and mother-in-law appear to be central players." Hearing it laid out that way felt surreal. The words sounded like someone else's tragedy, but they were his. Delgado continued, "We can build a case, but we'll need evidence straight from them. You're the connection. We want to set up a controlled communication, text, call, anything that leads to an in-person meeting. You're willing?" He hesitated for only a moment. "Yes." Back at his small Honolulu home, Caleb watched Noah pack a duffel for a weekend school trip to the Big Island. His son hummed quietly, oblivious to the storm building just beyond their walls. "Don't forget your jacket," Caleb said, trying to sound normal. Noah grinned. "I'll be fine, Dad. You worry too much." "Maybe." He forced a smile. "Have fun, yeah?" When the carpool honked outside, Caleb hugged his son a little longer than usual. As the taillights disappeared down the street, the silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. He turned back inside, phone in hand. His pulse hammered. He typed, "Caleb, Lena, I'm short this month. Can we talk in person?" It took nearly an hour, but eventually a reply appeared. "Lena, you know I don't like calls. What's there to talk about?" He took a steadying breath. "Caleb, it's about the money. I can bring cash. But I'd rather give it to you directly." There was a pause, then the three words that made everything real. "Lena, tomorrow. Ala Moana Park." Delgado's team moved fast. They wired his phone, tested microphones, ran through scenarios. Caleb listened, numb, as agents explained code phrases and signals. It felt strange, his private heartbreak now government property. That night, he sat on the porch while rain whispered on the roof. He remembered Malia's laugh, how she used to say, "In Hawaii, storms clean more than they ruin." He hoped she was right. By noon the next day, Ala Moana Beach Park buzzed with families and joggers. The air smelled of grilled teriyaki and seaweed. Caleb sat on a weathered bench facing the ocean, a folded envelope in his hand. Through his earpiece, Delgado's calm voice murmured, "Stay relaxed. We've got eyes on every angle." Then, from the corner of his vision, he saw her. Lena. Only it wasn't the frail, gray-haired woman from Malia's funeral. This Lena moved quickly, confidently. Sunglasses, leather jacket, hair dyed dark auburn. She looked a decade younger than her years. She sat down beside him, leaving just enough distance to speak privately. "You look tired, Caleb." "Been a long few years," he said evenly. "You could have just sent the money. No need for all this drama." He turned toward her. "Where's Malia?" Lena's lips curved, not quite a smile. "You still calling her that?" "She hasn't used that name in years." "So she's alive." "She's living," Lena corrected. "Big difference." Caleb's fingers tightened around the envelope. "You faked her death." Lena exhaled, almost bored. She wanted out. "You think she was happy scraping by in that tiny house while you fixed air conditioners?" "She had dreams, Caleb. I helped her get free." "Free?" His voice shook. "You stole from me. You made me raise our son alone. You built your life on my grief." "Don't be so dramatic," Lena said, her tone flattening. "You got sympathy, didn't you? People cooked for you, pitied you. That's its own kind of payment." Caleb felt his blood roar in his ears. "You took everything. You used my promise. You made that promise, not me." For a heartbeat, he saw the woman he once thought was family. Sharp, composed, completely unrepentant. Then he remembered Delgado's instructions. "Keep her talking." He leaned back, lowering his voice. "Tell me something. How many others like me?" Lena hesitated. "Enough. Grief makes people generous. You just have to speak the right kind of pain." "That why you did it?" he asked softly. "Because pain's easy profit?" Her expression flickered, anger, maybe pride. "You wouldn't understand. The system forgets women like us. We just learned to take what was owed." Across the park, two joggers slowed, agents in plain clothes. Delgado's voice came through the earpiece. "Perfect. Keep her there. We're almost in position." But before they could move, Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced down, eyes narrowing. Her gaze darted toward the parking lot, and Caleb followed it, just long enough to see Malia, standing near a food truck, scanning the crowd. Lena's whisper sliced the air. You brought them, didn't you? Caleb froze. What? She stood abruptly. You stupid man. From the lot, Malia's head snapped up. Their eyes met across the distance. Recognition, panic, betrayal, then she turned to run. Move now. Delgado's voice thundered in his ear. Agents surged from benches, from the walkway, from behind food carts. Shouts rang through the park. Tourists screamed as two women tried to scatter. Lena toward the restrooms, Malia toward the beach. Caleb stood motionless, watching chaos unfold like slow motion. Lena was caught first, tackled near the banyan trees. Malia sprinted into the sand, wind whipping her hair, until an agent blocked her path near the surf. For a second, she looked like she might dive straight into the water, run back into the lie that had once saved her. But instead, she just dropped to her knees, arms raised. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy enough to wash the heat from the air. An hour later, the park was half empty again, only the echo of sirens and the smell of wet grass remaining. Delgado approached Caleb, umbrella in hand. They're both in custody, she said. We'll transport them to the federal office downtown. You did good, Mr. Hanalei. He nodded, unable to look her in the eye. Feels strange. It always does. Layla joined them, soaked but smiling faintly. You just helped shut down a whole network. You probably saved a few people from the same hell. Caleb stared at the ocean. Then maybe something good finally came out of it. That evening, back home, he stood in the doorway of his quiet house. The envelope he'd used for bait sat on the counter, still full of the money he'd refused to send. He turned on the radio. A local station played slack-key guitar, soft and low. The melody wrapped around the sound of the rain, filling the emptiness. For 5 years, he'd been living in the echo of a lie. Now, for the first time, the silence felt like peace. 3 months later, the court building in downtown Honolulu looked nothing like the place Caleb had imagined justice would happen. There were no thunderclaps or dramatic speeches, just gray walls, the buzz of fluorescent lights, and the smell of rain-soaked asphalt rising from the street. He sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, fingers clasped together, waiting for the bailiff to call his name. In his lap was a folder of documents he knew by heart, bank transfers, insurance claims, and screenshots of messages that had once been his lifeline to a lie. Layla Brooks leaned against the wall beside him, her notepad closed for once. You ready? She asked. As I'll ever be, Caleb murmured. Inside, the courtroom was quiet except for the shuffle of papers and the clack of the judge's gavel. When his name was called, he stood, smoothed his shirt, and walked to the witness stand. Malia sat at the defense table. Her dark hair was tied back, her hands cuffed. Even in the sterile light, she still looked like the woman he used to love, and that, somehow, hurt worse. When their eyes met, she looked away first. The prosecutor began, his voice calm but deliberate. Mr. Hanalei, can you describe the financial agreement you maintained with your mother-in-law, Mrs. Lena Kahokahi, following your wife's presumed death? Caleb nodded slowly. She told me Malia wanted me to send her money every month. $400. Said it was my wife's last wish. How long did you continue those payments? 5 years. His voice cracked on the last word. I never missed one. The prosecutor's next question landed like a hammer. When did you discover that your wife, the alleged deceased, was still alive? He drew a breath. When I saw her with my own eyes in Kihei. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Caleb didn't look at the audience, but he could feel their pity pressing in like humidity. He went on to describe everything. Lena's manipulation, the fake documents, the sting operation. Each detail carved something out of him, but he kept his tone steady. When he finished, the prosecutor nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. When the defense attorney rose, she was young, confident, too polished. Mr. Honey, she began, you continued sending money voluntarily, correct? No one forced you. Caleb met her gaze. Grief forced me. The attorney blinked, thrown off. Excuse me? I thought I was keeping my wife's memory alive. I thought I was honoring her. But they turned love into a contract. Even the judge paused for a heartbeat before motioning the attorney to continue. She didn't push much further. There was nothing to push against. The truth had already spoken. By noon it was over. Lena pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Malia's charges were heavier: wire fraud, identity theft, and insurance fraud across state lines. She was to be extradited to the mainland for sentencing, since the case spanned several jurisdictions. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled of wet earth and diesel. Reporters swarmed, microphones flashing like lightning, but Caleb ignored them. He wanted quiet. Just quiet. He walked down Bishop Street until he reached the harbor. Fishing boats bobbed against the dock, their ropes creaking in rhythm with the tide. He leaned against the railing and let the wind slap his face. For the first time in years, he felt no pull to check his phone, no instinct to send money, no obligation weighing his chest. He was free. Weeks later, the rhythm of life began to return, slow but certain. Caleb threw himself into work. He started taking side contracts, fixing air conditioners for small shops in Chinatown and the North Shore. The pay wasn't glamorous, but the honesty of it felt like medicine. Noah came home from his trip full of stories, laughter returning to the corners of their house that had forgotten what it sounded like. They cooked dinner together on Sundays now: teriyaki chicken, rice, steamed greens. Sometimes Noah would ask about his mom, and Caleb would answer honestly but gently. "She made bad choices," he said once. "But we don't have to live by them." Noah had nodded quietly, eyes wiser than his years. "So we make our own promises now, huh?" "Yeah," Caleb said, smiling. "Our own." One Saturday morning, a thick envelope arrived from the Federal Restitution Office. Inside was a check, recovered funds from the fraud case. $18,000. He stared at the number for a long time. Not because it fixed anything, but because it finally felt like the world had given something back. He used part of it to fix the roof, part to start a small savings account for Noah. The rest, he donated anonymously to a grief counseling center in Honolulu. He didn't need to keep the money. He needed to keep the lesson. That night, he and Noah stood on the beach near their house, the sky painted in orange and pink streaks. The ocean lapped gently at their feet. "You ever miss her?" Noah asked softly. "Sometimes," Caleb admitted. "But not the person she became. I miss the woman I thought she was." Noah threw a small stone into the water. "Guess the ocean keeps a lot of secrets." "Yeah," Caleb said. "But it also gives them back when it's ready." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, silence between them, not heavy now, just full. Later that night, after Noah had gone to bed, Caleb sat on the porch with a beer and the trade winds curling around him. The house felt different, lighter. He opened his banking app out of habit, scrolling to the old automated payment line that had once ruled his life. Transfer, $400 recurring payment, canceled. He smiled faintly, then deleted the entry altogether. For a long moment, he just listened, to the hum of cicadas, to the waves, to his own quiet breathing. He thought about everything the last 5 years had taken from him, and everything it had given back. Clarity. The understanding that guilt can become its own prison if you let it. He whispered into the night, not sure if anyone, or anything, was listening. "You don't owe the dead more than the living." The words settled somewhere deep, peaceful. If you've ever carried guilt for too long, if you've ever poured your energy into keeping someone else's memory alive while your own life stood still, Caleb's story isn't just his. It's a mirror. Because maybe you're still sending your own kind of payments. Maybe you're still feeding something that doesn't deserve to live off your love anymore. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to cancel it. The hardest truths are the ones that free us. And the stories that hurt the most? They're the ones that remind us we're still here, still learning, still human. So if you found yourself somewhere inside Caleb's story, don't look away. Listen. There are more stories that cut deep, heal slow, and remind us what it really means to start over. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because the next story might just be yours.